I hope everybody can hear me. Very good morning, afternoon, or evening to all of you, wherever you are. For all of us joining us now, we come to the second part of the session, People, Planet, Policies. And the center of our work is that we are informing and discussing on the most recent developments of bioeconomy strategies worldwide during the last 12 to 18 months. And we are also focusing on climate adaptation and mitigation in our discussions. I said in the first part of this session that we are celebrating a very unique occasion. The biogiants of the world are meeting, if I may say so. We have, for the first time in recent times, very high-class representatives of the United States, of China, of Japan, and Finland representing the European Union, plus a newcomer, Namibia, with us. We are not, as we did last year, focusing on Latinos. This year, we're really truly traveling around 4 continents. When I look on the last 12 months, since the meeting in Pará, in Brazil, there are additional challenges coming up. The pandemic has turned to be a kind of post-pandemic period with continuing problems for health, materials, but also in service and supply chains. We are concentrating on topics like energy, food, and supply challenges. And I'm not foreseeing what is coming up, and that is a potential financial challenge, the price situation of gas and oil, etc., and inflations in some parts of the world. And I'm very proud that in spite, no obstante, as the Spanish say, of these difficulties, we are able to present today high-class experts from 4 continents. And I'm happy to start with simply telling you that in spite of these obstacles and problems, the dynamisms of bioeconomy developments all over the world are unbroken. More I'm not willing to say at this stage. We are going to listen. Let me therefore immediately start with a representative from our host country, from Finland, because Finland was publishing a few months ago its updated strategy from the last 7-8 years. And I'm very happy to present and introduce you Madame Sari Tasa. She is a senior advisor to the Ministry of Economic Affairs and Employment in the Department of Innovation and Enterprise Financing, and she has turned out to be the Mrs. Bioeconomy with respect to the updated strategy. She has a Master of Science in Chemistry, and we are very, very curious to what are the novelties in comparison to the first strategy Finland had as one of the first leading countries in Europe in the bioeconomy. Dear Sari, you have the floor.
Thank you, Christian, and thank you for having me here. It is always my pleasure to share our strategy, and we are truly proud of what we have been able to do. And as the strategy itself is quite big and comprehensive document, I've tried to highlight some of the aspects today as we've been discussing from the climate point of view. And let's first start from the starting point of the update, why we updated it. We had the first one in 2014. And since then, the operating environment has changed dramatically. Also, European Union has a new strategy. And we made the conclusions in 2019 about the European situation. Our government has very ambitious targets on having this carbon neutrality 2035. And well, we needed something new because we felt that most of the things we were planning to do 2014 were either achieved or they were outdated. So we needed a new one. And the strategy was done very close cooperation with many ministries, but also stakeholders. We want to have this as a common paper, and I think that was one of the strongholds of our previous strategy. It was something that we shared with the stakeholders quite widely. The outline was that, as you've been mentioning today already, water and energy and many other themes, carbon capture, exports, international questions. We made a map what kind of other strategies and programs there are ongoing in Finland and what is missing. And we found 42 different kind of programs that are either giving the support or giving the baseline for our bioeconomy strategy. And of course, those were considered when we were planning what to do next. Also, from the European point of view, we saw a lot of supporting or framing strategies for bioeconomy. Also, the definition of the EU strategy is now wider, so that we have the forests in Finland, but also, for example, this synthetic biology included. So what is one of the research strongholds in Finland? What is still missing in European level? And I think that is also the question that in global level we should discuss, how to take this as a part of the industrial policy to make it really in the big scale, but sustainably. And when we were looking these strategy issues, sustainability was quite heavily discussed, also in both in policy sector, but also in political sector. And we figured out that we have three different kind of things, as many other have shown also, that we need to be ecologically functional. We need to take care of the biodiversity and carbon capture and many other solution possibilities from the positive side to solve the global problems. But also it has to be economically rational. It has to be socially sustainable. And in the middle, we have then the green transition and circularity and renewables. Our vision then is that we need to go towards higher value added. Use less, and what we use, use it more efficient. And instead of taking stand on amount of production, the strive is now to create higher value added, more with less. We were diving in how important bioeconomy is for Finland, what are the sectors we have there, and are there any specific actions we need to take inside these sectors to make it work even better. And the focus areas we figured out was that we need to have the raw materials, the ecosystem services in place, so that we have the raw material, we have the sustainable way of doing things. We need to have a competitive operating environment, meaning regulations, funding and collaboration with other countries, which is extremely important in the future. But also strong competence and technology base to do the best available things we can. And that all helps us then to create a higher value added from the bioeconomy. Actions, what we have taken are categorized here in groups. And as discussed, we need local actions, but think global. That is kind of the global activity. And my personal opinion here is, and it is also, I think, stated in the strategy, is that we need some kind of global collaboration to take care of our bioresources. So we need international collaboration, but we also need very close collaboration in European level, so that we have the common markets, common regulation base. And also the local bodies are extremely important, because that's where the biomasses are, and that's where the well-being must be generated. Also, carbon management is mentioned, and And as I said, we enlarge the definition of the bioeconomy, not just forest-based or bio-based, but it includes also water, and we are talking about textiles, we are talking about the chemical industry, and many other issues there involved. And we are now, at the moment, one of the actions is that the local bodies are creating their own bioeconomy action plans, and to see if there's kind of a smart specialization in some areas. Like now, Ruka mentioned tourism, ecotourism. There's a lot of other possibilities around the country. And if you want to know more, and don't have time more, please visit our webpage, bioeconomy.fi. There's a lot of other information about our strategies and bioeconomy in Finland. What kind of products you can find from here, what kind of collaboration possibilities there are, and many, many other things. Thank you.
Well, I thank you very much. I thank you very much, dear Sari. Very interesting, with quite a few novelties. I find the most interesting novelty in the title, that you're focusing on higher added value. We are going to discuss that. I also find it very interesting that you are introducing for the first time, at least as I can see, ecosystem services to be playing an important part. We have to discuss that as well. And congratulations for it. The rest will come. Now,
thank you.
The next speaker, I thank you. The next speaker comes from Africa, from Namibia. Last year we had the East African Union, now we have Namibia. And I'm extremely happy to introduce you, Mr. Paulus Mungeyi. He is the focal point, the focal person who is coordinating the development of the National Sustainable Bioeconomy Strategy of Namibia, and he works in the National Commission on Research, Science and Technology, NCRST of Namibia. So we have the right person who is also very strongly involved, multinational, for example, in the Global Bioeconomy Summit. You have the floor, Paulus. Hello? We can't hear you.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, yes, we can hear you. And we see your first time.
Thank you very much, really, and it's a great honor to form part of this great forum and share the Namibia experience in terms of really developing the national bioeconomy strategy. I've been coordinating and facilitating together with the focus groups from industries, private sectors, and government institutions really toward the development of the national bioeconomy strategy. Really, our aim is really one to accelerate the development of innovation and sustainable use of biological resources for the growth and sustainable development in Namibia. And then we really started around 2019, I mean, and we, at the moment, really were in a draft, which is have to go out likely to be this week or next week for the ministers and cabinet approval subsequently. I'm going really in short minutes that I have to going to highlight what we have done in the focus areas really. It's really on value addition in the strategic objectives within those within the strategy, environmental sustainability, and research and development and innovation, and including really creating awareness. This, as I said, we really started sometimes in 2019. We started a bottom-up approach where we went really to the grassroots levels. And the context itself, the word itself, bioeconomy, was more of a new word, to local communities, and even including industry groups. So we really want, one of the initiatives is really to create awareness, which is one of the key strategic objectives, promoting innovation and indigenous products and services for sustainable agricultural systems. We are really coming from COVID pandemic, and before that, we really have experienced a massive drought that have stricken. And this is really go hand in hand with the thematic areas, with the core theme of this forum, which is climate and climate change really impacting our societies. But really, we also want to upscale capacity building through knowledge dissemination and trainings, and raise brand awareness, related really to bioeconomy strategy. And another one, really, it's really mouthful slide, but I'm going to highlight that the strategy also focuses in three thematic areas, which is agriculture, natural resources, and health. And those ones have their own different initiatives and activities that have to be coming out between 2023 and 2028. Really, in terms of agriculture, we want to increase plant and animal productivity through biological resources and development. I'm going to highlight few things from the slides, and we also want to create innovation in post-harvesting agro-processing technologies. We realize that really, in terms of African context, really 40% of food did not get up to shelves or being consumed because it really goes to waste. But we want to have innovative systems that really create or assist communities, including local communities, on technologies, including preserving them, also including value chain processes. And the other one is really natural resource management, strengthening research effort to create a next generation of products. I mean, we are really moving to our traditional way of doing things. It's not keeping up with the production. I mean, with the change of climate. However, we foresee that with the really R&Ds, it's one of the key strategies. The other one is value addition and employment creation. They have been massive, obviously, apart from drought and from COVID, job losses. But then want this strategy to contribute to social economic upliftment by increasing seed fundings for value addition and promoting local fresh produce, and other cost-cutting issues, really including funding for research, which is very limited in terms from our context, because at the moment from our countries, this is government-driven, but we want to have it like industry-driven, of which now most of the stakeholders are also coming from private sectors. And the other one is really environmental sustainability, which is promote and certifying schemes to ensure sustainable use of natural resources. And the other one is induction of technology that capture carbon emissions. I'm going to talk much more about this, especially at the our discussions. But I want to give, before I close, I want to give really an example of circular and sustainable. Give an example of a marora tree, which is that species name, but then it has really a lot of traditional knowledge, and it's appearing really in Southern African region. And it's a sector that is coming up with a lot of traditional knowledge, also with some food security and nutrition, and also pharmaceutical advantage. And also this really, if it's governed properly, the resources governed properly, it's really going to address food security, including also, providing feeds, which is for our context, one of the key sectors, which is part of the bioeconomy strategy. Chris, I don't want to waste time on this, but this is where we are. We finalize our strategy. We just have to take it to our governments and approve it for implementation. I want to thank you very much for this opportunity.
Well, thank you very much, dear Paulus, for this interesting outline of the strategy of Namibia, which shows also the high diversity of the bioeconomy solutions. You are not concentrating on chemical industry or biomass processing for aromatics, etc. You're concentrating on food. You're concentrating on indigenous knowledge. You're concentrating on the agro part, and also look on other horizons. Thank you and congratulations and all the very best for the last steps in your strategy. We're coming back to this in the discussion. Now, it couldn't be more contrastful now if we now go to Japan, dear colleagues. From the plateaus and the regions of Southern Africa, we now come to the Far East. And I'm very happy that Wataru-san, Wataru Mizunashi, is with us. He's an excellent man combining, well, knowledge, high industry experiences. He worked with Mitsubishi for a long time and also in industry. And he's now the Director General, the Bioeconomy Unit Technology Strategy in the New Energy and Industrial Technology Development Organization of Japan, the focal author, not only for the strategy, but also for the yearly update. And that makes it so interesting to listen to him, that we are going to learn how things are permanently changing in Japan. You have the floor.
Thank you very much for a kind introduction. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can. Everything
Okay.
is fine. And we see everything. Great.
Okay, thank you. And so also, I would like to thank to organizer giving this great opportunity. And so, I would like to introduce our organization briefly. Our organization, NEDO, is a Japanese funding agency tightly bound to METI, Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry. Our organization's mission is addressing energy and global environmental problems and enhancing industrial technology. And we also propose 3 essential social systems necessary for realizing a sustainable society. That is circular economy and bioeconomy and sustainable energy. I was surprised. It's same figures showed just before keynote speech, but we are emphasize this essential social system is very important and connect each other tightly go on. And next, I would like to introduce Japan's bioeconomy strategy. Our definition of bioeconomy is a concept of expanding sustainable, renewable, and circular economy and society by utilizing biotechnology and biological resources. And our target is to realize the most advanced global bioeconomy society by 2030. We think bioeconomy promotion is essential for both sustainable economic development and solving social challenges. And we put several KPI, key performance index, is bio-based market expansion, totally approximately 50% increase of current market size by 2030, from 6 trillion yen to 92 trillion yen, roughly equivalent to 75 billion US dollar. Just now, yen is very weak, but roughly equivalent to 75 billion. And promotion measure will be made for segment below: biomanufacturing, primary production, and healthcare. And we have tried bioeconomy community formation for realize speedy R&D to market introduction with investment by gathering large companies, startups, and investors under one roof. So we create global bio-communities in April 2022 in Tokyo and Kansai, and regional bio-communities in 4 unique regions: Hokkaido, Tsuruoka, Nagaoka, and Fukuoka, in order to form bio-cluster nationwide and build unique value chains in respective areas. And also, important thing is data platform establishment. We will provide guidelines for biological data linkage and usage and create common platform for accelerating R&D and market introduction by the end of fiscal year this year, aiming to create environment that enables practical and applicable data linkage covering diverse fields. The right side is a summary of Japan's bioeconomy strategy. I want to emphasize international collaboration is essential to promote bioeconomy. And there is a high potential for creating synergies among states sharing fundamental values. So I want to summarize my talk here. Japan has formulated bioeconomy strategy and continue to revise every year till 1930. Our goal is to aim for economic growth while giving due consideration to the natural environment. And we believe that bio-related actions are extremely important. In order to clarify this importance, it is necessary to quantitative measures in terms of not only economic, but also environmental value. Japan's bioeconomy strategy will always to be improved while taking this point into consideration. NEDO has proposed the importance of essential social system we call ESS, circular economy, bioeconomy, and sustainable energy for creation of sustainable society. In order to solve social challenges, such as creating a carbon neutral and sustainable society, it is important to build a more sustainable society system and work together tightly. So that's all my talk. Thank you for your kind attention.
Well, Wataru-san, thank you very much for a highly interesting summary of what this biogiant Japan is doing. And I just want to find out that the remarkable features for me, and the first one is that you are updating every year. That is really very good. You're remaining very dynamic and up to date. The second one, I'm really impressed that you are having these linkage to the data, biological data, which are sometimes underestimated in other strategies. And I'm very happy that now you have this separation between the national biocommunity and also the regional ones, which makes it very, very realistic, because the bioeconomy will not fly if it doesn't fly in the regions. So thank you very much. Extremely and highly interesting and good food for our discussion later on. We come to the next biogiant, and that is the United States. This year we were celebrating 10 years of the blueprint, dear Mary, and you were the principal author of this blueprint when you were working 10 years ago in the Office of Science and Technology Policy, the famous OSTP in Washington. I remember from my times when I worked in the German embassy there. And now 10 years later, how is it? Is there going to become a new updated strategies? You have been the mother of the first one. You might turn out to be very, very, very essential also for the second one. You have the floor.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It's always a pleasure to be here. I hope you can see my screen. Could you please confirm? Yes, thank you. I'll be telling a slightly different story today about a different kind of strategy, a non-government strategy brought forward by a relatively new philanthropic initiative known as the Schmidt Futures. And it is founded by Eric and Wendy Schmidt, two philanthropists. Eric Schmidt may be familiar to some as the former CEO of Google. On the left side, you can read for yourself in a July issue of the Financial Times why Eric Schmidt is committed to the bioeconomy. He believes that DNA represents an interesting, scalable platform for innovation. And on the right-hand side, you can see where a quote from Wendy Schmidt, who believes the bioeconomy allows us a new way to work with and rather than against the natural world to create a healthy, sustainable future. They asked that I join for a time to develop a bioeconomy strategy for public and private funding opportunities. And so I did this with a talented early career scientist named Andrea Hodgson, and the two of us put together a task force of 30 people with diversity in all of its dimensions: early career, gender, ethnicity, different sectors of the bioeconomy, a lot of industry representation, which we don't usually get in reports, consensus reports in the US very often. This group of people focused 6 months of their time and put out an interim report in December, which allowed us to get a lot of feedback. So it was very much a community effort. And to remind some of you and introduce some of you to the US bioeconomy, its key elements: biomass, biotechnology, and of course, as echoed from our previous talk of our Japanese colleague, data. So the group worked in 4 basic areas: bioproduction, research and development opportunities. This sounds familiar, I think. End-to-end production capacity. How much do we have in the US and how much do we need? Mobilizing talent, which is another word for workforce development, another framing of that. And fitting for this session, modernizing policy. All of this to focus for a US circular bioeconomy. That's not a common framing in the United States. And here is the strategy, first ever, I think, from a private entity, focused, I call it a play in 3 acts. The first one, Act 1, is the narrative and recommendations. The narrative sets up the recommendations. Part 2 is the technical strategy, how to implement those recommendations. And part 3 are illustrative case studies where we are able to describe why, in lay people terms, why the recommendations are so important. Part 1 and part 3 are written for policymakers in non-technical language. And as I mentioned, part 2 is for the implementation of the technical part of the strategy. So just very briefly, I won't go into the very long details of this slide, but there are 5 pillars for action. Expand research to accelerate the translation of discoveries into public and economic development. Translation of discoveries. Foster a national ecosystem of innovation and commercialization for the bioeconomy specifically. Build a national infrastructure, we just heard about infrastructure, for bioproduction scale-up capacity. Develop a diverse workforce to power the current and the future bioeconomy. And policy, subject here, enable policy that incentivizes and supports a future circular bioeconomy. I've colored some things in green under number 3, a network of pilot production test beds, under number 4, cross-training disciplinary for the workforce development, and under policy, enable measurement of bioeconomy, better measurement. Today, nylon that is derived from petroleum feedstock and nylon that is devised from the biomass feedstock is captured by a single economic code. We can't see how our bioeconomy is growing with bio-based products. And of course, one of my favorite topics, enable and enforce federal procurement, the power of procurement to drive clean energy solutions. My last slide here shows what's happened since, to answer the question directly, what's happening in the United States. Congress, in a massive effort of industrial strategy, just passed an act called CHIPS Plus Science Act in July. This is $52 billion for research and fabrication facility infrastructure for the semiconductor industry. Interestingly, when it got to the floor of Congress, in it was folded the Bioeconomy Research and Development Act of 2021. And among other science acts, what this does is instantiates in law the bioeconomy is important. The Federation of American Scientists, I show you here, has done a little I took a screenshot of their analysis of this, but importantly, it's got cross-agency research and development provisions in law now, ethical, environmental, safety and security provisions, workforce development commitments, that measurement process that we want to see changes in, that's in here too. And importantly, that testbed infrastructure was also written into law. So things are happening, and I'm told we can expect another exciting surprise next week. Although, I've been told that for quite some number of times now with respect to an expansion of the full strategy nationally. And with that, I say thank you very much for your attention.
Well, dear Mary, thank you very, very much for this interesting stream of information on the latest development. And I wish you and your colleagues really good luck for a kind of updated version of what has happened 10 years ago. You're, by the way, for the time being, not the only one in the world where a strategy is not necessarily a state one. Canada has also a bioeconomy strategy, which is exclusively worked out and based on industrial activities. So I don't think that this might be in the United States the right solution, but it's so interesting that from a private stimulus, the congressional discussion has been revived. Congratulations and all the very best. Very, very interesting. Now we come to another biogiant, China. And I'm particularly happy that we have Professor Yin Li with us, because China was 2005 when we started in Brussels with a knowledge-based bioeconomy, our main partner. And it was the Chinese Minister for Science and the Commissioner Potočnik from the European Commission who jointly inaugurated this in 2 separate meetings with a time difference of 9 hours. And 2 big differences. In Brussels, we had 450 participants. In Beijing, we had 5,000. But that's life. So I'm very happy that now we have Dr. Professor Yin Li with us, who is an excellent researcher and has also been in Cornell University, has worked in the Netherlands, etc., and who is really very, very knowledgeable on all these things, also very knowledgeable in multinational affairs, being an advisor in the International Advisory Council on the Bioeconomy Summit. I'm very happy that we now hear from you that finally China published its own strategy within the 14th five-year plan just a few months ago. You have the floor.
Thank you, Christian. Many thanks for your nice introduction. And you are very right that actually, although we have we call a bioeconomy plan, it's not really named as strategy, but the name of the bioeconomy can be dated back at 2005, as you mentioned, where we have the International BioEconomy Forum organized by the Ministry of Science and Technology, where you participated a few and made a great contribution. Thank you very much for stimulating the early bioeconomy development in China. Well, the bioeconomy concept is not just popping up in China. By 2010, we actually listed the bioindustry as one of the 7 strategic emerging industry for China. Well, at that time, 12 years ago, the strategic emerging industry means they are important strategically for the future of China, but they are small in terms of scale. So in 2012, roughly 10 years ago, we have issued our first plan for the bioindustry development, where there are 7 sectors. So the biomedicine, biomedical engineering equipment, the bioagriculture, the bio-based manufacturing, and the bioenergy, and the bio-related environmental protection, and bioservices. So those are the 7 sectors related or involved in bioindustry, where you can see some of that are not completely called the circular bioeconomy, but it's basically, as Mary mentioned, it's biotechnology based, and it's also data intensive and some of that are related to bioresources. So I think China's consideration on the bioindustry and bioeconomy share greatly with Mary's three key elements: the bioresources, the biotechnology, and the data, the bioinformatics related, so currently called the BT plus IT. These 7 sectors are still the core of the bioindustry development. But now, when we are moving from the bioindustry to bioeconomy, there are several factors that I want to introduce. Why we are now issuing the bioeconomy strategy or plan? There are several factors. In fact, number one, China has a national strategy for carbon peak and carbon neutralization. So considering the climate change, we're talking a lot, and also from our colleagues here in this panel. So we also consider the bioeconomy is a very important measure to achieve carbon neutralization, which is sustainable development future. And secondly, is for giving new driving force for the economy. So China's economic development has been experiencing from the high-speed development to moderate, medium to low rate development. So the bioeconomy definitely can inject a new driving force for that. And thirdly, because we are in a new development stage, so there are some new needs from the societal needs, from the people's needs need to be addressed. For instance, people need longer life and better lives. So the biomedicine is still one of the important things, but not only the biomedicine, but health-related biotechnology are one of the focus for the bioeconomy. And for the food, we are developing from the stage from we have sufficient food, but now we want better food. We also want a future food, which has a low CO2 emission. We heard a lot of story from the United States and many European countries. So for better food, for the healthy food is also an important sector. And this food is also related to the bioagriculture, to the breeding of the next generation of the seeds. And thirdly, talking about the circular economy, and certainly we have the industrial biotechnology and the bioenvironmental protection and also bioenergy, bio-based manufacturing as the third pillar. And fourthly, Christian, we discussed a few days ago that the biosafety issue is also one of the important pillars in this bioeconomy plan. Because of the COVID-19, because of the biotechnology is always a dual-use technology. So once we are utilizing the good part of the biotechnology, we'll also be aware of the potential risky part of the biotechnology and to be aware of that. So that's also very important. And beside these 4 important pillars, compared with the bioindustry plan, the bioeconomy plan, we also have an independent chapter for illustrating how can we better preserve and utilization of the bioresources. So we need to know how much bioresource do we have and how can we sustainably utilize, explore the bioresources, and also how to share these bioresources with our global partners. So those are the 4 major parts. So regarding to how most people want to know how we are going to implement this plan or initiative. So it's they give some guideline for that. For instance, the bioeconomy, we must have many new bioproducts. Many bioproducts are not available on the market. So there must be some regulation on the market entry policies. And some policies are just lagging behind the technology developments. So there has to be some new incentives on the market entry policies to stimulate new technology developments. And secondly, China's biotechnology, life science, and also the bioindustry development are always mostly driven by the central government's efforts. So to develop bioeconomy, the central government's financial support is also very important across from the basic research to technology development, to commercialization, to application. There will be government incentive, government-supported R&D project to support the whole value chain development. And thirdly, we certainly don't want government input is the only finance resources. We also want the enterprises, we also want the financing sectors to inject money and the capitals into that to form different stream of the capitals to form a joint forces to develop this sector. And fourthly, very important, you need a high caliber talents. And China has enjoyed a great speed for our life science and technology talents. from domestic fostering talents and also the overseas trained talents. This has been a great manpower for driving the bioindustry development and also the future bioeconomy development. And fifthly, international cooperation and open innovation are always one of the key policies for China's enterprise and also industry development. So fostering and more active international cooperation and global open innovation is still a key policy for the future bioeconomy development. And lastly but not least is we want to have, China is a very big country, so, and there are regional imbalance development. So there are some places where people know in Beijing, Shanghai, and what's called Hong Kong and Shenzhen Delta area. These are the three areas where most high technology are developed very rapidly, including the biotechnology and the bioindustry and bioeconomy. So they will be proposing some new policy requests or some new incentives, and we will try to give them right and try to encourage them to test some new ideas, new modes and new models, so that to get some experience, then to for the rest of the country and to take this measure policy and to have a broader development. So I think that's a basic summary that I want to share with all the peers, the new bioeconomy plan of the China. Thank you.
Well, I thank you very much. For me, it's the first time since your plan, I have to tell you, your plan has been published, that I have learned so much, because unfortunately there's not yet any certified translation into English from the Chinese original plan language. Thank you very much. And I found it absolutely fascinating to what extent now also health, data, and regions play a very important role in the implementation of your strategy. Now, dear colleagues, we finished our panel's presentation, and we now come to about 10 to 12 minutes discussion among ourselves. And I would like to start with a question to all of you. And this question is, to what extent have the latest development in the world, not only in your countries, but in the world, and that is the pandemic, that is the question of vaccines, that's the question of supply chains in many areas to be safe and to be secured, but also food and energy, and maybe in the future funding problems. To what extent have they influenced the present way of working out strategies and implementing? Sari, may I start with you?
Yep. Regarding the changing environment, we had some knowledge already last autumn when we were writing the strategy, and it is done totally virtually. So no meetings were made face to face when we were preparing it. So we were kind of growing up to the new normal. And when it was finished and we had the situation ongoing then in Ukraine, only thing that we needed to change was one word in the preface.
Ah.
So, yep.
Very indicative. Very
so
indicative.
we are focusing on the future. Mm-hmm. And regarding the feed and energy, we have separate strategies for those two topics. But as long as they are considered as part of the bioeconomy, I think it is good to compare China and Finland in this sense that in Finland, we have 5 million people. And in China, a city with 5 million people is not that big yet, right?
It's a suburb of Chengdu.
And 75% of Finland is forest. So, and we have quite long winter. So we can't grow the food year round. I think those are the biggest differences that we need to live up. And we need the energy to heat up houses and also the processes we have require some amount of energy. Luckily, our government had this very ambitious target to get rid of fossil fuels already ongoing. And what we have done now, we have speeded up some of the efforts there. But then from the bioeconomy point of view, I think the biggest thing happened was that we have used peat as one of the energy sources, burning it. And we were now looking for to conserve it and find other use of it. But I think we need to put that on hold for a short while to figure out the next options. But in other ways, we are part of the energy market, the European energy market that gives us the problems. But in other ways, this is normal us figuring out how to live with that neighbor and problems with that neighbor. No big news for us.
Thank you. Paulus.
Thank you for the question. I just want to highlight that when we were developing this strategy between 2019 and 2020, beginning or late toward from 2018, we already have been hit by drought, right? And the next one, when we were doing consultation processes, it's when COVID was just, on our doorsteps. And I have also to shamefully say that when we're doing it, almost 90% of the teams got COVID through these consultation processes. However, from our perspective, we realized that when COVID hit and we had these discussions, we realized that there's potential from our indigenous plants that, of course, can be upscaled or can be found to, if they can have some of the nutritional advantage. And that's what also the bioeconomy strategy of Namibia is focusing on, so that we can really improve R&Ds in this processes during the implementation process, because we already have certain sectors that are working toward it. And during the implementation, perhaps we'll be able to collect some of the data and the impact thereof that it will make toward in the implementation of the strategy. I also want to emphasize that, during the, we have a very small pharmaceutical companies that during the pandemic, in terms of vitamin C, really some of these medications that have been assisting the populations were able to be produced through that, obviously partly using some of our indigenous products. In terms of energy, we also realize that well, in rural areas, electricity is still, lacking, right? And that is, and again, the grazing areas, it's being impacted by bush encroachments. What the government, which is also part of our strategy, is that they want to use to remove these indigenous bushes that have been encroaching a lot of grazing areas. However, alternatively, then partly producing feeds for animals using different techniques, of course, and also improving it with certain nutrients. Because by then, one part you are creating energy for local communities, also for exportation. But again, some of these bushes can also be used can be used in feed productions, because we are really from semi-arid areas, and there are many couple of research that is being done by different universities. Some being sponsored, for example, from our institution, so that they can really try to improve. And really, those are some of the inputs that will be coming from the bioeconomy strategy. Supply chain, in terms of supply chain, there are two things. Again, COVID impacts. Us as a country of 2.6 plus minus population, at the moment, we're importing around 76 to 70% of our food commodities. And you can imagine the impact it already have made during the COVID pandemic, where, a lot of this supply chain have been hampered, really impacting different communities, including, someone just to access food. Now, this does not really mean that the country is not doing much. We want industry-led initiatives and programs through the strategy so that we can improve the supply chain within the country before, go out to, because there are small producers really that have potential. However, in terms of, improving land restoration and restoring, for example, nutrients into the soil, those are really lacking from the communities. I think I'll end up there at this moment. Yes.
Very, very interesting to show this diversity, of the situation, which is hardly to be compared. Wataru, in your process of yearly updating.
Okay, thank you very much for your question. And so, indeed, COVID-19 made a great impact to society and also mind of us. And we have some difficulty to discuss, to make a revise biostrategy. But I think Japan's government has several strategies, including bioeconomy, but also clean energy and green innovation for carbon neutral or something. So I think it is a bit important thing is to connect such these actions with bioeconomy or bio-related solutions. So for example, food production and making a clean energy or something. As I said before, so bioeconomy and circular economy and sustainable energy is need to tightly bind and enhance collaboration each other. So that's my opinion and thought. Thanks.
Well, that's very interesting, because I also want to refer to this wonderful slide which Sara showed us at the beginning, a second one, where you have these 40 or 45 different policies in which the bioeconomy strategy is embedded. This is a very important picture, and I think it will be similar in many countries. And the big question will be, how are we doing the work in it, the bioeconomy not being suffocated by this complexity and also fabric of others. Mary.
Yes, 3 policy points for implementation. The first, I think, mRNA vaccines. It was the power of federal procurement that made that happen, right? That was number 1. Second, the distributed biomanufacturing theme really did come to the fore in development of a lot of the parts of the strategy that we just released. And it was in part, and I didn't talk about this in my overview, because a report from the government came out that said up to 30% of our chemical plants that make the hazardous chemicals, for example, are in areas that are threatened by climate change. And so within 20, 30 years, they're going to be flooded, sea level rise, all sorts of issues that they are vulnerable to. And so why not develop a strategy now for distributed biomanufacturing to replace some of that traditional chemical manufacturing, and link with that not only just a strategic chemical reserve, but the federal procurement to create that market certainty that is needed to jump into new markets. And then lastly, I will say on the energy front, sustainable aviation fuel challenges for real got serious in the United States in the last year. And I will say that I have been an avid watcher of the Japanese regulatory favorability for the CRISPR genome edited new food products. So a lot of things happened.
Okay, thank you very much. Yin.
Yeah, first observation, well, we see the China's bioeconomy, basically it has 2 meanings. So one is bio-based economy, but the other is bio-associated economy. So the bio-based economy mostly related to what we usually call the circular bioeconomy. This is generally accepted. But bio-associated economy, for instance, those are something related to the COVID. For instance, you have the nucleic acid test, and you have the vaccines, and you have those mentioned new drugs. Those are bio-associated economy, and this will generate a new opportunity. That's what we call the merge of the digital economy and the bioeconomy. And this is very interesting because you are using those big data on daily basis, and the big data are related to the bio features on that. So in principle, when you are testing the nucleic acid, you could also testing a genome sequence of per person for that. So basically, you will be able to identify the potential genetic diseases for each people, and also maybe personalized drugs that can be designed for them. Those are what we see potential opportunity derived from this COVID. And secondly, we also see, because I said, driven by the demand for the carbon neutralization in 40 years' time, that China announced, and there will be gradually more pressure from the petrol-based chemical production and shifting to the bio-based things. So we already see that a great investment happening in these stock markets for supporting the bio-based manufacturing company. And thirdly, it's the synthetic biology driven. Some of my colleagues also mentioned that synthetic biology, we can see the importance in all different sectors, for instance, in the biomedicine, in the food, in agriculture, and in bio-based manufacturing, and also in the BT plus IT merging for that. So that's my observation.
Well, thank you very much. We are now in a terrible situation because it is the time has passed, and I would have loved to have more questions put to you, but I'd like to give the chance at least to have one question from the audience. And I'd like to announce already today, dear friends, that I plan to have in April, in March or April, another time a meeting of all of us in which we might deepen what we say today, because the time is really very, very short. And then in a few months, you know, the situation will have probably further developed, and the way how to implement all those ideas and strategies and plans which you have, you know, that might be quite interesting to see to how we are going to implement that, so that we might deepen our discussion. So thanks for a moment. And I'd like to ask now Professor Scheile whether there is one big important questions from the audience, which I then would put to one or two of our panelists.
Yes, Christian, I would like to bring up one question. What is the role, or what should be seen as the role of the industry, the big chemical industry, the other industries, in relation to the governmental strategies worldwide? And what does it influence in the value of the bioeconomy in total? We spoke about the Japanese ones, which have 50% already bio-based production, or value, or others like in Namibia, we are a little bit less. So there's a big difference in between. So what could be the role of the industry compared with the project of Schmidt Futures in relation to the governmental strategies worldwide? Please.
Okay, Sara, would you please start?
I'm happy to start on the behalf of Europe in this answer. Yes. To say that none of the governments does the bioeconomy. It is the companies that does most of the actions. And I think that's also why it is important that we have the discussion and collaboration and sharing the views and the strategy with the industry. So we got a lot of support from industry and industrial associations when we were doing this. And we are looking forward also to collaboration in the European level, so that there is also these industrial associations involved, as we are doing at the moment. And I think that is the main thing. What is the role? They are part of it. They are doing it. And that's why one of the big themes we had was this operating environment to make it fruitful, supporting, but also making sure as well as we can with the knowledge we have now, so that there are also limitations to keep it sustainable.
Thank you. Paulus, in your country, the situation is a little different, I presume.
Yes, this is really quite different in terms of the implementation. Most of the projects and programs are being led by government. However, this really created too much pressure because of the resources being shared between institutions. However, the government later realized that it had to have a law which is a public-private partnership and creating so that really a role of industry can be played. As we speak now, in terms of also linked to the bioeconomy strategy, there is a concurrent conference or forum running now, of which I'm going to go sometimes, on bush biomass industries, whereby really it's composed of private sectors and they want to drive really the bush biomass in terms of creating energy and really upscaling or making impact in creating agricultural rent. So it's coming up slowly, but then at the moment still is government driven. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Over to you.
Yeah. Wataru, for you the answer should be very simple, being a big industrial country.
Yeah, so it may be chicken and egg, but I think important thing is the action and strategy of the industry, including individual companies in strategy and government support through policy and regulation or something, and also national project put on the collaboration area for industry. So that's my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Mary?
Two important roles, I think. My understanding is that after transportation, the chemical industry is the #1 polluter. And so I think what they can do is they can speak with one voice, just like the semiconductor industry just did, and tell the government, this is what we need as incentives to move from traditional to bio-based. I think that's really important. I think only right now really big companies have been able to even test the bio-based part, and many of them, like DuPont, you can look to see what happened there. The second role, work with institutions of learning. I don't mean just colleges and universities, but places for training of the workforce for the next generation. Work with those institutions, tell them what kinds of certificates are needed for the kinds of workforce roles that are happening now and that will be required later. I think those are two really important roles for industry to work with government entities and with institutions of learning.
Thank you. Yin?
Well, certainly the companies and industries are the key factors involved in bioeconomy development. So once when the government was making the plan, bioeconomy development plan, many companies working in different sectors of the bioeconomy are invited to consult and to be involved. So they are involved in this planning, the whole process. Well, one of the things that we noticed that is the overall innovating ability. The innovation ability of the whole industry needs to be constantly improved. So in the overall bioeconomy plan China issued for the next 5 years, there are special projects designed from the government support to boost the innovation ability from individual company and also from the whole industry and also across the value chain from basic research, technology developments, commercialization and application. So this is, I think it's a major process. But companies are developing the products they're on sale to increase the bioeconomy value. But on the other side, the government also using this tax repay and also to support innovation ability boost.
Thank you very much. Well, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, I think we have to come to an end. And I'd like to sum up with a very few phrases as an observer of this discussion. The dynamism of the development of the bioeconomy strategies and action plans and activities are, in spite of many, many, many obstacles and difficult situations all over the world, unbroken. The diversity is even larger than we had before. By all means, the complexity has grown. And I again refer to this excellent 2 slides which Sari showed us, for the European situation. I'm sure that each of you, and also of those who are going to prepare regional and national strategies for their countries, will have to cope with the same situation to get a right embedment of the bioeconomy into these fabric of rules, of policies, of new regulations, etc. The second point, I think, in comparison with last year, where we had a very strong focus on indigenous knowledge in the Amazonian area, we find that also in Africa now. And that I found very interesting, that Paulus was referring quite a few times to indigenous knowledge, indigenous plants, etc. I'm not only talking about Chinese medicine, but also about the enormous terroir, the enormous toolbox of potentials in Africa. The third point is data. That was for me really flabbergasting, really interesting, that the way of how to identify data, how to measure them, how to link them, how to exploit them with the most advanced technologies we now have in comparison to the last years is very, very important. The digital strategy of a country to be combined with the bioeconomy strategy, as one of you said, extremely important. Regions. I see with great pleasure that not only in Japan, but also China, you have now a very clear regional understanding, on what is to be done, that the bioeconomy can fly also for integrating the regions. That, I think, is extremely important and will go also into the area of the question of the global governance, to what extent regions will play a role for global summits, for global bioeconomy policies. Next point is upscaling. Many of you use the word upscaling in various, if I may say so, situations. And that is a good word, because it shows a progress in maturity, in industrial and in economic maturity for the bioeconomy. And last but not least, energy and food are remaining or coming back, if I may say so, as really important topics for the bioeconomy. And in this respect, I see a lot of commonalities, even if, the question of the markets, the question of the industrial composition will differ from continent to continent, from country to country. So, dear friends, I thank you extremely, very, very much for your contributions. Quite a few of my observations I can't deepen. For example, the very interesting remarks on the workforce. Without adequate workforce, which is highly developed and advanced, we will never be able to cope with new economic models. Come on, So how are we going to do that? And I fear that also the question of new business models, of new funding systems we will need all over the world for bio-based products and processes will become an important subject. So thanks a lot. The so-called operating environment in which we were working here today was excellent. I thank the organizers for giving us the opportunity to exchange views, and I would love to see all of you again in a few months when we might deepen quite a few of those points where we just could scrap the surface so that others can take home messages when they have been with us here this morning, noon or afternoon. Thank you. Stay healthy, wealthy, and wise.
Okay, well done, Christian. I suppose you are still together with us?
Yes, I am.
All right, very good. This was already the 5th time to having this as a first session, and it's always so as impressive as today. So, and okay, you already wrap it up that very, very well. So I don't go in that. So, but maybe one aspect that, okay, that, okay, there are always these black swans which are affecting also the strategies. Okay, you talk also about it, okay, the COVID and, okay, Corona, and, okay, what would be the implications? Now we have also this geopolitical matter, so if I dare to ask it, okay, how do you see that, okay, how that would then affect on the bioeconomy? So is it too early to say?
No, it is not. But I must tell you that I'm a little concerned because the bioeconomy is a very strongly future-oriented economy model. We were talking already 12, 14 years ago about the One Health principle, that you cannot divide animal, plant, and human health. We were talking about value chains and adding values for 15 years. We were starting with the circularity about 20 years ago, a very important element of all biological resources. We were talking about biocities already 8, 10, 12 years ago. So we are, if I may say so, expecting, or we are assimilating trends and can predict or are forecasting them in a wonderful way. But this is hampered now because we have so many crises, we have so many present points to get solutions for, that we are postponing to some extent our presence, postponing it, and so the future is farther and further away. And there I see a certain risk for the bioeconomy, and we have to counteract.
On the other hand, seems to be that, like it was told by the Wataru, that he said that they will increase the bioeconomy value by 50% by 2030. It's not that far away. They are then talking about what they say, $75 billion. That's incredible.
That was wonderful for me to hear. And also what our Chinese colleagues said, to what extent Chinese industry is now getting incentives from the state to be part of the future development. That is that makes me rather optimistic. So anyway, I'm very optimistic listening to the contributions today, which, by the way, are differing very much year to year. That's so fantastic to see that. And it shows how diverse our planet is, and that's good. But I have this concern, and we must be simply prepared, to be even more active and to be even more proactive, if I may say so, in order to counteract these potential risks.
Okay, indeed. And with these words, I think we stop here. And thanks, Christian, and thanks, Sari, thanks, Paulus, thanks, Wataru, thanks, Mary. And thanks, Ying Li, for your participation. And we hope that you can stay with us till for the afternoon session. This was a good helicopter perspective that we all received about the bioeconomy. We will now carry on for the next session, and that's about more like a business. That was also asked by Matthias Chile in his question. So we will hear what do the business leaders do think about that. What are their expectations on this very important field? So with these words, let's have a good lunch break, and we will be together with you within less than 1 hour. So stay with us, and see you soon.
And we thank the organizers for all the technical preparations and the good performance. Thank you.
Thank you very much.